Thank you for coming out to the talk today. This is Understanding the Unreal Ecosystem. And you might wonder what that is exactly. And so I'm here to tell you about, besides the fact that when you download the engine, you get all this great and amazing technology, there's a whole bunch of other resources, initiatives, programs, what have you, that we offer outside of that. And these things, I feel, are extremely important to independent developers everywhere. So we're going to talk about those. A little bit of an introduction. My name is Alan Noon. I am the Senior Engine Evangelist for the Americas. And apparently I've been in the industry for 26 years. I had to double check my math. It's kind of hard to believe, quite honestly. I started out in CoinOp, and back in the day, CoinOp was, shared a lot of similarities to independent developer development here today. The place I started at was very much a mom and pop shop. It was owned by a husband and wife, and I was like employee number 30-something-ish. So a very small team. I moved on to console and then PC development, mobile. I did a couple of years in slot machines, which was super interesting. Learned a lot there. If you're curious about that, we should have a talk later because, again, there's a lot of parallels and similarities with what's going on with in-app purchases and loot boxes and all that other good stuff. And then I spent a couple of years doing VR and AR as well. I'm probably best known for my work in tech art, but I did spend a substantial amount of my career doing game design. I started out way back in the day with 2D, before 3D was even a thing. When 3D became a thing, started doing 3D animation as well. So I've done AAA development and then mid-tier as well. If you're not familiar with mid-tier, that was a thing that was going on in the 2000s. We don't really hear much about that kind of sort of range of the spectrum of development these days. And then I did the independent thing out of my house for a year. I was in the spare bedroom, frittering away every penny I'd ever earned and then some. So maybe we could talk about that. But I bring that up because if you're an independent developer, you're doing the one-person show, I feel you. The struggle is real. So we're here to help you. And yeah, I'm something of a hobbyist as well. I always have some number of projects kind of on slow burn in the background in my spare time. I like to work on these things. All right, so the agenda for this presentation. We're going to talk about epic games and what I call the indie spirit. We'll talk about the evolution of the engine itself and how that has enabled small creators, independent creators over the years. And then we'll go beyond the engine to the meat of the discussion here about the Unreal ecosystem. And then finally, something I'm incredibly excited to talk about, Unreal Indies. We'll get to that at the end. All right, so sure, Epic Games is a large organization these days. You may have heard of Fortnite, kind of a big deal. But the origin of Epic is as indie as it really gets. So it started back in 1991 by Tim Sweeney, and he was working out of his parents' basement. He named his company originally Potomac Computer Systems. And I love this fun fact here. There is a small conference room, only holds a couple of people at headquarters, but it's called Tim's Basement, to kind of remind us where we've come from and how it all began. And even better, like on the wall in the corner there's a framed picture of Tim from way back in the day in his parents' basement, huddled over the Apple II there, hacking away on his first title. So pretty awesome. So it was from there that he developed ZZT. I'm actually not sure if it's supposed to be pronounced ZIT, but here we go. It was released as shareware over bulletin board systems back in the day. Bulletin board systems, precursor to the internet, if you're not familiar with that, for all my youngsters in the crowd. And shortly after ZZT became successful, he renamed the company Epic MegaGrants. And he's on record saying the reason that he did this is because he was going up against these huge, what he thought was huge corporations at the time, all these major game developers. And he wanted to sound big and important and have, some sort of cachet, even though he was the sole developer. And quite honestly, if that's not independent game development in a nutshell, I don't know what is. I mean, I did the same thing, right? I was CEO of a one-man show. Okay, so this is ZZT, and might not be too much to look at today. To be quite honest, it probably wasn't a lot to look at back in the day then when it released, but this is how it all got started. And while the game was fun and interesting, all that good stuff, what really set it apart and drove its popularity was the fact that it was released with its own object-oriented scripting system, its own language. So the game development community that sprung up around this game could go ahead and create their own levels and game types and all sorts of new gameplay. And so the game kind of had its own life and continued to grow. And recently, what I found out in doing research for this presentation is that there was actually a contest back in the day where it was a contest to see who could create the best new game types and levels and what have you. And it ended up being that the top 6 winners ended up becoming Epic employees, which I think is pretty cool. And then, yeah, final fun fact on ZZT, the last copy shipped in late 2013. So, the long tail is something that we talk about in independent game development. There's a great example of that. Okay, so Unreal 1 and 2, the Unreal Tournament timeframe. So this really started to open up the doors a bit. There was the level editor and Unreal script that, again, allowed the player base to extend and create new functionality and new gameplay, much in the way that ZZT did. So there's all kinds of new innovations in terms of, levels and vehicles and weapons, game types, and so on. So this allowed the player base to take their first steps to becoming small developers, independent developers. And as an example, you may have heard of these fine folks. They've been around for some time. So originally, this was a one-person organization. They started doing vehicle mods for Unreal Tournament. So again, using those tools that shipped with the product to be able to start working on these vehicle mods. And after some amount of success with that, brought on a number of more developers. To be quite honest, it was a bunch of college kids, really. This was the first time they've ever really developed anything. And they created a title called, and I have to read this because it's a bit of a mouthful, Supersonic, Aerobatic, Rocket-Powered Battle Cars. And so, very popular, didn't quite achieve mainstream success, but that laid the groundwork for what became Rocket League. And that's when it really blew up. So in my opinion, this is a fantastic example of an indie success story that was enabled by the free use of all the tools and technology that Epic gave away. So then we move to the Gears of War days, Unreal 3, and along with modern graphics hardware became this massive jump in fidelity, and all of a sudden, all of this artwork and content became like really complex and time-consuming. And so Unreal was there to, again, enable developers to jump in and improve workflows. So all kinds of new features were added to the engine from the Unreal days. So there was still Unreal script. There were new particle editors, the beginnings of Cascade. So now anybody could jump in there, an artist could jump in and design these amazing effects. We had Matinee, so people could create these non-interactive sequences and have full control of the camera. And Kismet also, that was the first steps into visual scripting. So Kismet was this node-based language that was added. And originally you had the one node-based graph attached to a level. But that allowed non-programmers to go and create interactivity. So pretty awesome. More power in the hands of the creatives, so to speak. Now, I'm not saying that programmers aren't creative, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, and then along with this, along with UE3, after some number of years, UDK became available. And that is the Unreal Development Kit. And we released that for free. And there was some amount of limited support in the form of the forums and documentation, wiki, what have you. And again, independent teams could then pick that up and start developing their own titles. And while UE3 was, I think, somewhat unfairly, but largely known as the shooter engine, it became easier to develop new and different types of games. Which brings us to modern time frame of UE4. A huge effort was made, again, to make game dev more accessible to new developers. And with the introduction of the project structure and the way that we broke out assets and a number of other things, it became even easier to develop new types of games and gameplay. So we have the templates that allow you to kickstart the project. So if you're looking to do a vehicle game, we have a template for that. Side scroller, template for that. And you could also, we have our content pack, so you can drop those in and get spun up right away. And we introduced Blueprint, which was like the next generation of Kismet. So again, where I mentioned where we had the one node-based graph in UE3 attached to the level. Now Blueprint is woven throughout the engine. So you can have your level blueprint, but you can also create what we call blueprint class actors and create any kind of functionality you really want to. Also important to note is that the new licensing model made it much more accessible as well. Anybody can download the engine for free and get started right away. And also, source code is freely available. This, in my opinion, is like one of the biggest pluses in favor of switching to Unreal, is the fact that you have access to the source code. So if you come up across a bug in the engine, you can either fix that bug and submit it to us as a pull request, or you can come up with your own solution to work around that. And a very strong and healthy independent game development scene sprung up around UE4. You can take a look at what's going on there across Twitter and in our forums, and just incredible, amazing games are being made. And we should probably have a word about Fortnite. So, fun fact, again, Fortnite started as an internal game jam, and if I have my information correct, it was 5 people. And because the editor and the engine allowed people to go ahead and iterate and modify and allow everyone to dive in and start creating, this massive success that we've been blessed with, came into being. And so because of that success, we are able to give back to the game development community again, and in a much bigger way. I do want to note, so with respect to Fortnite, everything that goes into that game goes back out to the community, goes back into the engine. So all of that tech that drives this big project, this big hit called Fortnite, everyone has access to that. So there's no secrets there. That's a question that we quite often get. When we go out and we visit studios, we talk to developers and our licensees. They often ask, well, what is the secret sauce that you guys have? What are you holding back that we don't have access to? And the answer is there is no secret sauce. We share everything. And we say, if you're really interested in knowing what's coming to the engine, what you're going to have access to, seriously, download Fortnite, play it, every couple of weeks, download it and play it, see what's in there, and pretty soon you're going to have access to all that same tech. What's the point of all this reflection? Again, I'm trying to impress upon you the fact that from the very beginning, Epic started out as an independent venture, and that has been in our DNA ever since. We're here to support independent game developers everywhere. Which brings us to the Unreal ecosystem. So some of these initiatives and resources that I'm going to talk about, you're probably familiar with. Some of them, perhaps not. But I want to go over them here because in addition to those, we're going to talk about some other things. So we will cover the Epic Games Store, online services, MegaGrants, the marketplace, support, social media, and source code. So let's get started with the store. Okay, so in today's world, we don't feel that the 70-30 split is reasonable, okay? Now, back in the day, when online storefronts were first becoming a thing, this may have been fine. There were all kinds of unknowns, all kinds of risks, right? All sorts of infrastructure that had to be built out. And quite honestly, if any of you were developers back in the day, this is quite a better deal than what we had going on in the days of cartridges and brick and mortar stores and CDs and all that other stuff. But things are different now. And online storefronts are the reality. That's the way that most people, I think, buy games. And because of our recent success, again, we're able to make some changes and share our good fortune. So all developers earn 88% back when shipping through our store. We feel like this is a much more equitable split and allows developers to have more money in their pockets from which they can then develop more great games and build sustainable businesses. A couple of things to note. The store launched in December 6th of 2018, so not even a year old yet. Approaching its first birthday, but we've been really pleased with the success. The developers on the store have been really pleased with the success. For the time being, our foremost focus is on delivering great exclusive titles and high-quality free games each week in order to build a sustainable audience. We're looking to expand our offerings, but for the foreseeable future, that storefront will be heavily curated. That all said, we have this URL here. Lots of great info. Tells you all about the store. We have an FAQ. And then at the bottom, we do have a submission form. So if you have a title that you think is a candidate for our store and you'd like to get it up there, you can go ahead and submit. The application's all the way at the bottom of the page. It looks like this. So you just give us some contact information, tell us a little bit about yourself, and also about your game. Give us your elevator pitch, right? And I want to point out the video link there. Little pro tip, I cannot stress how important a good video is. It tells us so much about your project. We can kind of get a sense of how long you are in development, kind of what the general idea is, so on and so forth. Now, we do get a lot of applications. Interest in the store is extremely high. We get a ton of applications. So if you apply, please be patient, and we'll get back to you. Okay, so let's talk about online services. So online services allow you to launch, operate, and scale fantastic games. You know, over the years, we've had to solve a number of difficult problems with respect to networking, because quite frankly, networking is hard. But now we're going to share all of that tech and those solutions with you. So it is a C++ SDK that works across any engine, any platform, any store. Currently, the UE4 integration is available, and integrations for other engines, other storefronts are on the way. So the features that we have available now are game analytics and ticketing. With game analytics, you can record all kinds of data relevant to what's going on in your title. We have a dashboard and tools to be able to analyze that data that work in real time so that you can look at that and make decisions about your title and how you want to boost retention and engagement with your player base. The ticketing system is dedicated support, so a player can enter an issue into the database, a ticket is created, and it gets sent out to you, so you can provide that dedicated support to them. And then coming soon, we have a whole host of other features, so player reports, data storage, communications, et cetera, right? So player reports is a player-to-player rating system, so you can see both positive and negative feedback direct from the player base and act accordingly. Communications, again, in-game comms across any platform, any engine. Parties that allow your players to group up and play. And then I'll mention the overlay as well, which is a unified UI for friends and other features available to players across all other games and engines again. Okay, so we built these services for Fortnite. We rely on these same services to run our store and our engine. And so again, you get that all for free. There's overview, information, and the FAQ found here. And also, so this is the documentation page for online services. This is a gold mine. So if you're interested in pursuing that, definitely have a read through. Awesome stuff there. Okay, Epic MegaGrants. This is one of my favorite ones. So in years prior, we had a program that we called Unreal Dev Grants. And this was a $5 million fund that we gave away over 5 years. And it allowed developers to, provide a little boost to their project and help them further along their goals and their aims. And it was really successful. We saw some really awesome titles come along. Some things went to ship, and amazing what the community is doing out there. And so after we had distributed that fund, we decided, again, because of our good fortune, thank you, Fortnite, that we could blow this up and really go huge with it. So we started Epic MegaGrants. And now the fund is $100 million, and that will be distributed, again, over 5 years. And so if you have that project that needs that little extra bit of support, that financial bump to keep you going, then please do apply. It's funny when I go out there and I talk to developers, and I always ask, are you familiar with dev grants? And the answer is typically yes, sometimes no. I said, well, have you applied? And there's almost like this hesitation. And they're unsure if they should or not, if they're worthy. But, I would say yes, please do apply. That's a substantial amount of money just available for the taking. We love seeing great titles and great projects spring up, so please take advantage of that. Now, to be clear, this program is not intended to fund the entirety of your project. Again, it's a little financial bump to keep you going, right? Obviously, if you have a game, we're talking about independent games here today. If you have a game, you should apply. But there are a few other buckets that we can distribute awards from, including educational initiatives, open source projects, media and entertainment, and enterprise as well. I want to point out educational initiatives as well, because this is probably relevant to this crowd, to some of you at least. When we're talking about educational initiatives and awarding prizes in that realm, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be some sort of effort that's tied to a college or a university or an established educational institution. You might be making awesome YouTube videos, great UE4 tutorials on the weekend or something, right? And maybe you need some soundproofing tiles for your bedroom, or a new mic, or a new capture rig. Go ahead and apply, because that qualifies, and we could probably help you with that. And open source as well. So you may have heard about the award that we gave to Blender. Nice little bump there for those guys. They're making fantastic 3D application, open source. You don't have to do something quite on that scale, but perhaps you're working on a plugin that creates interesting content or something that improves workflow that everybody could use. Those two could qualify as well. So please apply if you're working on something like that. And then the final two categories there, maybe not so relevant for independent developers here today, but I want to mention them. Maybe you have friends that are working in the media and entertainment realm or the enterprise realms. Please let them know and they can apply as well. Okay, so here's some tips. So yeah, I said, please apply, take advantage, but please don't just like throw out a ill-formed application. Put some thought into it, because that'll help us. And I would say the first thing you can do to help us is give your project a recognizable name. A lot of the discussions around the projects that people submit happen in email and Slack channels and even passing in the hallway. So if you've got a name that our internal team can recognize immediately, that saves us a ton of time, right? We can get excited and rally around a thing that has a name. So give us your elevator pitch. Tell us about the project. Why are you compelled to pursue this? What's interesting and unique about it? Have you scoped the project appropriately? It's very easy to be pie in the sky and think of all these crazy ideas. But we really want to make sure that people that are applying have thought through the development process and put some thought into it. And tell us about your team. How many people are you? What's the breakdown of disciplines? That'll give us a picture as to how, I don't want to say serious, but again, how much you've thought through the process. Like if you say, oh, we've got 10 idea guys, and we got this awesome idea, and we want to fund it. Well, you might get a grant, but if we hear that you've got artists and programmers and designers and sort of like a nice spread, or at least all the disciplines are covered, probably have a better chance. And then your timeline, again, when are you looking to release? What are the major milestones along the way? Tell us all about these things. And that can be challenging. I know, having done this as an independent developer myself, thinking through the timeline of your project, if you haven't done that before, that can be a challenge. But again, just show us that you're thinking about these things and we can provide some guidance as well. Tell us how you'd use the grant. So there's a field there where you can tell us how much you would like, and we'll definitely consider that. We reserve the right to modify that number up or down. But part of what will enable us to award these grants is if you tell us how you're going to use it. Again, like I gave the example of the education case earlier. Like, I need soundproofing tiles for my spare room. Okay, that seems like a pretty good use of money. At least then we'll know that you're not going to run out and buy a Tesla or something, right? Okay, and then most important, include a link to a video. Again, video, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then do the math on a video, I guess. It's incredibly important. And yes, there is the URL for MegaGrants. Again, general info, FAQ, and at the bottom of the page is the actual application. All right, so let's jump to the marketplace. So the marketplace has been in place for a while now. We have over 9,000 content packs available. We give away 5 free content packs every month. And I mentioned that I personally have my hobby projects out there, and quite often it's all just like gray box stuff, but first of the month, every month, I'm out there downloading that stuff. Highly recommend you do it too. We have frequent sales and promotions, and everything's categorized, right? So there's characters, animation, environmental props, awesome effects, audio, code plugins, etc. I do want to point out characters and animation in particular because I take advantage of that a lot. So all of the humanoid animation packs are all mapped to our mannequin skeleton, so it's very easy to mix and match those things and use them in your projects. So it's awesome. And interesting to note, so again, like all this stuff is awesome for getting off the ground and spinning up a new prototype and having like high quality assets in your weekend hobby project or what have you. But also some of the best known games, some of the biggest games you can think of in the past few years have shipped with this content in it. It is quality because we curate the marketplace. We want to make sure that anything that's submitted for sale on the marketplace reaches a certain quality bar. So you're not spending time, fixing, gross errors in content and what have you. And so, like, I found this the other day on Twitter. This came across my feed. I love this. So we have this gentleman, Elliot Gray. He's developed this plugin here, the Unified Interactive Water System. And he tweeted out the other day, he's like, sometimes I just like to go get a content pack and flood it with water and run around. And it's like, man, like, that's, okay, let's be generous and say that's a couple or a few hours of work. But that is like already super compelling, right? Like people are going bananas in the responses. So yeah, Marketplace, totally awesome resource. Okay, and support. So if you are operating under the EULA, then we have a couple of avenues of support. The first one would be Answer Hub. See the URL there. And basically, yes, this is community driven. You can go up there and ask your questions, and other members of the UE4 community can jump in and answer those. And you can also do the same. You can jump in and answer somebody else's question. There's a whole upvoting, downvoting system. Lots of good stuff there. It's all searchable, of course. And then I'll mention the forums as well. Forums, again, community driven. There's a very good and strong community there of very experienced and intelligent developers that are willing to help out. There's a whole karma system that encourages people to participate and answer and be helpful. And social media, I do consider this a very valuable resource, particularly to independent developers. We have our official Twitter channel at Unreal Engine. And a couple of things I want to note. So Unreal Engine Twitter is out there monitoring the feeds and what have you. It will like your posts, but it is developer-centric, okay? So the type of content that this Twitter account is going to like and possibly retweet is typically going to have to bring value to the development community, right? So if you develop something really cool looking or some new solution, what have you, you can go ahead and tweet about that. Use the appropriate hashtags. So hashtag UE4 or hashtag Unreal Engine, hashtag game dev even. Those will bring your tweets across our feed so that we can then act upon them. But what it's not going to do is retweet your Kickstarter announcement or even the announcement of your game, because that's more like PR and marketing, right? Again, this is more dev-centric. Now that said, on the evangelism team, all of us happen to have our own personal accounts, and while social media is not really part of our job description, we like to actively participate, and we have a little more leeway in what we are able to do. And so, again, using your hashtags, those will come across our personal feeds on the evangelism team, and we will retweet game announcements and what have you in an unofficial capacity. So, but please, this is not an invitation to blow up our DMs and what have you. So, okay, and then there's the official Facebook group, which is the channel of Unreal Engine, and all kinds of good information there. Frequent posts about dev blogs and upcoming Twitch streams and what have you, where we're going out in the world, all that other good stuff. And Twitch, I just mentioned. Yeah, so we have our live stream that happens every Thursday afternoon at 2 Eastern, if I recall. And that is, quite frankly, I think that's awesome. So we start out with a community spotlight. Actually, that's not true. Let's rewind to the very beginning of the show. We have I guess like a fast forward workflow video. That's how we lead into the show. And developers out there can take a half-hour capture of their workflow and send it over and compress it down to 5 minutes. And we use that to lead into the show. So those are like super fun to watch. And then we go into community spotlight. We talk about the things that are happening out there in the development world, particularly the indie development world. And then we'll have a topic of the day, some sort of feature demonstration or explanation of new tech that's coming down the line. And those are super fun because they have Q&A, live Q&A, that people can interact through the chat channel there. So very good stuff. And if you're interested in doing one of those sped up workflow videos, or you want to get spotlighted on the community spotlight section, you can reach out to that Twitter handle and go from there. Okay, so these are unofficial, these are not Epic sponsored channels, if you want to call it that. These are unofficial, but I think these are valuable and important because it's part of the ecosystem. The community is a very important part of that. A couple of Facebook groups that are awesome, I think. Unreal Engine Developers Facebook. So again, unofficial, but what I really like about this Facebook group is it provides sort of greater insight into what's going on in the development community worldwide. So like my Twitter feed, for example, like I seem to be seeing the same things from the same people or the same regions, localities, whatever, but this Facebook group in particular is more broad, worldwide, like I said. So again, lots of great questions, lots of great answers, very supportive group. And then attached to that, run by the same group of folks, is the Unreal Engine Jobs Facebook. And that's really good. So if you're looking for somebody to help out on your project, definitely join up that group and see what's going on. There's lots of talented developers out there looking for work. Very good stuff. If you're looking for work yourself, you can put up a post, Awesome. Unreal Slacker's Discord is pretty incredible. There's over 27,000 members there, very active. And there are a number of Epic folks that are frequently logged in to kind of see what's going on, help out, jump in. But lots of good conversation happening on that Discord. And then finally, Reddit. There's the Reddit group there. Lots of good posts again. OK, and then, yeah, I want to talk about source code. Saved one of the best for last here. Mentioned it earlier. But not too many of the other engines out there offer source code freely available through GitHub. And again, an invaluable resource. So you can download, see how the engine actually operates, get some insight as to why. If you've come across an engine bug, you can come up with a solution to work around that, or even if you want to solve or fix that bug and then resubmit it to us as a pull request, you can do that as well. OK, and so to get started with downloading, here's the URL. Gives you all the information about this. Tells you how to submit pull requests, what the proper format is. We've taken thousands and thousands of changes over the years to the engine from the community. So, OK, so finally, that was the Unreal ecosystem. We've covered the history of Unreal a little bit and Epic Games and how we all got started. And hopefully you get an impression of sort of our indie spirit and how we're trying to help independent developers. And part of that is this new initiative that we're launching today called Unreal Indies. And this is our initiative that demonstrates our commitment to you, to independent game developers everywhere. And this really spawned because we had this idea. If you're an indie dev and you need somebody to talk to at Epic Games, but maybe you don't already have a pre-existing relationship, or you don't have a contact email, you don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to us. We want to be available to answer your questions and communicate with you. So the evangelism team is here to support you in that fashion. We can offer you guidance and advice and make the different connections that you need, whether it's inside of Epic or outside. Maybe you want to get started with Nintendo Switch development and you don't know who to talk to. Talk to us. We know those folks, and we can put you in touch with them. So we have two primary components of Unreal Indies launching today. So there's the Unreal Indies portal, and then the Indies at Unreal email alias. So this should be live now. And basically what this portal does is all of those resources and features that I mentioned during the ecosystem section, we've taken all of those and a few other things that we didn't talk about today. We've collected all of those resources up into one location on the portal. And it's meant to be your one-stop shop for all of this stuff, right? So not only is there information on the store and MegaGrants, online services, but there's a bunch of other stuff you may not yet have considered. So for example, you're working on your title, and you want to put the Unreal Engine logo at the beginning, right? When you start up the game. Looks very official. But where do you go for that file? Like, how do you get that? And what are the rules associated with using our branding? Well, there's a link right there. It says branding. Just click on it. It'll take you directly to that page, show you where to download those files, whether it's still images, video, sound effects, et cetera. And then it also tells you kind of what the guidelines are for using that branding. And maybe you've been in development for a while and you're approaching your ship date, or your Kickstarter looks like it's going to hit funding, and now all of a sudden the idea of reporting royalties is becoming a real thing that maybe you just kind of pushed off while you were hacking away. I know certainly that's what I did when I was doing my indie thing. That's a problem for future Alan. But anyway, who do you talk to about that? How do you report royalties? What do you do? Well, again, there's a link right there. Takes you right to the form. You just fill that out, and you'll be on your way. So yes, this is live now. And in the coming weeks and months, it'll continue to grow. We'll add more resources and refine it. But lots of good information there. There's a section I do want to point out regarding the evangelism team. You can see all of the global evangelism team members there. So you can see who the evangelist is in your territory. And all of our Twitter handles there as well. So if you want to reach out to us through that method, you can do that as well. And also, this is that email alias I was talking about a moment ago. So you've gone through the portal. You haven't found the answer you're looking for. You want to speak to us directly. Again, you can send an email to us here. So here's another scenario for you. Perhaps your project has managed to amass a huge swell of support. Looks like you've got a sizable hit on your hands. And suddenly that 5% royalty is looking like a pretty big chunk of money. Or maybe you're in development and you're not finding the answers, you're operating under the EULA, and so you're not finding the answers you want on Answer Hub or in the forums, and maybe you feel like you need some dedicated support from Epic, again, what do you do there? Maybe some combination of both of those things is true, right? So you can reach out through this email here because it sounds like maybe what you want to start talking about is a custom license, because along with a custom license comes dedicated support and so on. So again, reach out to us here. We can start that conversation and put you in touch with our biz dev folks that can walk you through the process and show you what that looks like. And maybe you just want to know when we're coming to town. So the evangelism team is constantly on the road. We're attending meetups, and we like to focus on smaller events. Recently, we went to Play NYC the other month. We went to Bit Bash in Chicago. Again, like I said, we're always visiting the different user groups. And you want to know where we're at? Reach out. We can answer those questions for you. Maybe you want us to come visit your group that we don't currently have on the calendar. We can do that too. So yeah, feel free to share this email all over the place. We're there to support you in that. OK, so wrapping up, we covered the history of Epic and its truly indie beginnings. We looked at the history of the Unreal Engine and how its evolution has enabled independent and small creators over the years. We looked at the Unreal ecosystem and all those things that are available to you as independent developers. And then finally, we just launched Unreal Indies. That's about it for my talk. Thank you very much for coming.